Greetings. It is a joy to be with you in this virtual space. Our church community welcomes you whether you are new or a longtime member. We would especially like to welcome those who are here with us for the first time. If you are interested in learning more about our church community and its online offerings, please go to nsuc.org and sign up for our newsletter. There has never been a better time to get involved or to become a member of North Shore Unitarian Church. We would love to get you connected.
Welcome here this morning. We are going to celebrate our community today, the gifts that it offers its members and the wider community, and also invite us to recommit to supporting our church for the following year. If you are a member of North Shore Unitarian Church, you received a special package, and so I invite you to open that now. As we begin our worship, I will bring us together with some words from Marilyn Sewell. Come into this circle of love and justice. Come into this community where we can dream and believe in those dreams. Come into this holy space where we remember who we are and how we want to live. Come now and let us worship together.
Welcome and good morning. I am so excited to be here with you today. I've been looking forward to this service quite a bit. Now, you may notice in the box that Russ invited you to open, there is a little candle. So if you would like to join us in lighting the chalice flame today, you are welcome to do so. Of course, be careful with the flame. This flame affirms the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
Good morning, friends. I recently took the batteries out of one of my daughter's toys. As I unscrewed the battery case, I found myself met with a mix of emotions. Part of me was glad to be prepping the toy for donation. I hated that toy's annoying, cheap, and perpetually cheerful sing-song melody. Another part of me, however, lamented the fact that its sound, however terrible, would soon be forever gone from my home. My daughter has outgrown this toy. The disappearance of its sound is a reminder that my daughter will never be this little again, and that this time in my life is over. Today's Time for All Ages is all about those non-sight sensory experiences, those nuanced sounds, tastes, tactile experiences, and scents, specifically the specific sensory experiences that mark your time in this community. While the images in our mind's eye often dominate the record of our lived experience, I contend that the non-sight sensory experiences and memories create more nuanced and three-dimensional models of our experiences, places, and times in our life. Many of you took up my request in the NSUC Facebook group this week to share the specific non-sight sensory experiences that make this place special. These are some of the non-sight sensory experiences that you shared. The hubbub in the kitchen on Sunday morning. The coffee team talking and laughing as they cut and plate treats while cabinet doors are opening and closing and hot water erupts from the stem of the old coffee percolators. The smell and sound of a fire in the hearthroom fireplace. Smoke, heat, hissing, and popping. The hugs I get as I enter the building. Petting Louie as I come in, so soft and alive. Ringing the bell to remind everyone the service is about to begin. The slightly musty smell of the sanctuary, which adds to the cave-like sense of it. The centering sound of the bell gong. The sound of the choir as they move as one to begin a song. The sound of little feet running to RE class. The sudden guffaw when Lucas's serious analysis gives way to sudden humor, or the soft sigh after Anne has brought us all home with her caring words. The sound of worship programs being rustled. Listening to hear if the coffee pots are on and a fuse hasn't blown again. The heat on my hand as I extinguish the chalice. The scent of pancakes and bacon on RE breakfast days. The feeling of the recycled aluminum door handles into the sanctuary and the weight of the door, so strong and solid. The way the sanctuary doors thud as they close, and the way they still make a sound when you slip in late, but try so hard not to let them make a sound. The just warm enough breeze and the scent of early blooms that float in through the open hearthroom doors on a spring morning. The youth group room with its soft leather couches. Laughter during coffee hour and exclamations about some delicious treat that is on the table, especially chocolate. Of course, we're so grateful that Russ Krochak and others have put together little models of NSUC for us to have at home during the remainder of the pandemic. I would invite you to open your box if you have not done so already and take in its contents. Let the roughness of the rock remind you of one of Lucas's amazing sermons. Let the tea, chocolate, and coffee carry you away to a laughter-filled time with friends in a corner of the fellowship hall. Let the little candle, when lit, be a reminder of how we support one another during life's joys and sorrows. I look forward to the day when we can pet Louie's soft little head and fill the fellowship hall with so much laughter and conversation that we might wish in some small way that we were still on Zoom. Thank you for sustaining us all until that day comes.
Hello, my name is Christy Hagan, and I am currently honored to serve as the Vice President of the Church's Board of Trustees. If I had not already realized how important the church was to me, this time of pandemic and unrest in our country has certainly illuminated this fact. This is the place, virtually or otherwise, that I come to be nourished, to explore difficult ideas, to be held in love, to laugh, to be in community. I remember entering the sanctuary for the first time 25 years ago as a teenager. I stared at the windows, I listened to Waylon play the piano, and I met new people who are now familiar and dear friends. Over the years, I have gladly shared gifts of time and talent with the church, teaching religious education, supervising trips to Boston and to cons all over the Midwest, serving on committees, and participating in events such as Art Fair and Mitzvah Day. Our church is such a busy and vibrant place. Whether we are talking about the physical church at 2100 Half Day Road or the church we create by being together on Zoom. Talent and time are not the only gifts we give. This is the time of year when we also commit to giving treasure to the North Shore Unitarian Church. We are asking all members and friends to recommit a fair share pledge, which is 3% or more of your income. We, of course, understand that you may have a unique situation and value your participation and whatever amount you are able to give. Please go online today to fill out your pledge. Thank you for your generosity and all the gifts you give our church.
In order to make your pledge to North Shore Unitarian Church, I would encourage you to open a new tab at this time and head to onrealm.org. Once you're there, you'll need to enter your email address and password, which may be saved for you like it is for me. Upon entering your username and password, you should head to your home screen. Your home screen might look slightly different from what you see on my screen, but the important thing is that you find Giving on the left side of the page. Go ahead, click on Giving, and that will take you to this page where you can either give or make a pledge. Please click on Pledge. When you do that, you'll have the opportunity to enter a pledge amount, pledge frequency, and select the pledge year that you would like to make your pledge for. Please make sure to click on the drop-down menu and select 2021 to 2022 to make your pledge for this coming church year. Please note that the frequency that you select will probably be as can or annually. Please let us know if you have any questions about what it means by frequency. After you are satisfied with the pledge amount and frequency, go ahead and click Save. If this was too quick, please know that we will be sharing these instructions or a link to these instructions in the video description, and Rachel and Jonathan are happy to answer any questions you have about making your pledge. Thank you so much for your support of North Shore Unitarian Church for the 2021-2022 church year. As I said, please don't worry if you missed a step. This was just to give you a preview, but thank you so much for taking the time today to make your pledge to our church community.
Beloved companions, let us find one another in that space of prayer and meditation where we connect with the very spirit of life itself, the holy that binds us to each other and to the world around us. For over these past few months, this has been the only space wherein we have been able to gather. May we hold sacred the power and tenacity of the human spirit as we have continued to reach out to one another in loving relationship, to come together for companionship and spiritual nourishment, to hold each other in our hearts, and to pray for one another and our community. Let us then offer our gratitude for this divine love, a love that tethers us to this community and to each other across distance, a love that is so immense as to encompass our entire church family. Let us continue to participate in this love, to embody this love for one another. May we continue to show up for each other, to join together in worship and in service. May we perpetually renew our commitment to one another through the giving of our time, our talent, and our treasure to support and sustain this church, both our sacred house of worship and the holy that dwells in each of our hearts. Spirit of love, inhabit and empower this community as we hold a vision of that precious future when we will once again be able to be together in body as well as spirit. Amen, and blessed be.
A few years ago, a writer named Jane Roper published a piece called "Why I Finally Joined a Church." Roper's reasons are not trivial, though she is humorous about them. "Our twin daughters are only 3, she writes. Currently, their big questions are mostly along the lines of, where is my Cookie Monster doll? And why can't I have more raisins?" She continues, "But it won't be long before they'll start asking questions about what happens to people after they die, and why so many bad things happen in our world, and whether or not there's a God. There will be other, less metaphysical religious questions that we'll need to answer as well, such as, who is the lady in the blue dress standing inside of a clamshell in our neighbor's yard, and can we get one?" Roper concludes that church can be a place to help her answer these questions for her daughters. The author goes on to talk about church as being one of the few places that are left to genuinely connect with other people. She calls church a place where a group of people can work together, give of their time and talents, and support each other through life's joys and sorrows, not because they're family or even necessarily friends, but because they believe it is an important part of being human. End quote. I could hardly state it better. And I was proud to read at the end of the article that Roper's new church was a Unitarian Universalist one. There is something humanizing in what we are doing here in community, something that can help us evolve our most hopeful and our best parts. It is not something that we find in many other places in our culture. I think there's something saving in it and something worth saving about it. As I was finishing my studies at Miami University, I decided to take a seminar on Hannah Arendt. She is, in my opinion, one of the most important thinkers of the last century. She grappled with the political systems that had emerged at her time, the craze of fascism that was sweeping through Europe. Her best-known work is probably The Origins of Totalitarianism. The book is a long one, with many historical details about how Nazism took root and flourished in the Weimar Republic. So I hope that not too many of you will be disappointed in me skipping to the ending. What's interesting is that she writes at the end of the book that one of the conditions for the rise of severe political movements is disconnection. It's loneliness. It is isolation from others and the decay of meaningful community. When people have no common purpose, no sense of participation in something broader and grander, no ties to other human beings, they begin to yearn for a solution. Loneliness does not mean that we are necessarily alone. Actually, Arendt says that loneliness is most acute in the presence of others. It can mean simply that one has no meaningful community, no place in which to find that sort of shared purpose that she was talking about. This happens when meaningful human interaction is reduced to consumer exchanges or Facebook posts. Public participation is replaced by bureaucratic management, and the spaces of common life vanish. Each of these degrades our sense of meaningful participation with others. Now, this notion that we need a community in order to evolve the most meaningful parts of our lives, it's a notion that grinds against America's romance with individualism. That myth of individualism tells us that we should be the captain of our destiny. The more independent we become, and the more we feel unhampered by other people's needs, the more we can squeeze the juices of life's meaning. But Arendt gives a subtle warning about this narrative. She said that people are not more satisfied with total independence from one another. Rather, it is if they lose something that makes them human. And because they have lost that meaningful community that makes us human, people begin to turn to solutions that are inhuman. Loneliness becomes a precursor to the rise of desperate political solutions. Arendt observed diminishing avenues in American society for meaningful public participation. She said that we were becoming more like groups of people who are alone and lonely. And when this happens, when public institutions and practices fail to become places where we can shape our world together, people begin to divest in them. They become easier to pick apart. And perhaps that explains why we are seeing the rise of anti-democratic forces today, at least in part. Arendt believed that salvation came in rekindling meaningful connections and participating together in work for the common good. It begins, she writes, with the creation of community. Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal faith, and Anne articulated what this means so well last week. A covenant is a promise made between two persons or between groups of people. In Unitarian Universalism, it is a promise made between each member and every other member of that congregation. Joining a Unitarian Universalist congregation means entering into a covenant. We promise each other that we will be together in a meaningful way, creating outlets for changing the world and helping each other. It is a way of resisting the loneliness and isolation that Arendt was talking about, of finding connection that can change our world into a more humane place. At least that's my hope. One of my deepest hopes as a minister and as a fellow Unitarian Universalist. It's a question that haunts me, really. If you are someone who asks, is all of that really true? Does church make a difference? Or is this all just a bunch of talk? You're not alone. Jane Roper, the author of the article I talked about at the beginning of the sermon, says that it is not hard for her to be cynical about church. As she puts it, the cynic in me cringes to type these words about the church's meaningfulness. Indeed, like any other institution, the church does stumble. It fails. In the last congregation that I ministered to, I made a phone call to a couple who had visited on one of my Sundays that I was off. The woman at the other end of the line was short with me. I stayed for coffee after the service, she said, and not a single person came up to talk to me. I thought for a long time about what she said. If I had been there that day, would I have managed to talk to her? Why had no one said anything? I took what she said very seriously. A covenantal community is not only there for people who have already signed the membership book. Part of its promise is to provide hope and connection for people who are new to the community as well. And in that particular instance, we had failed to do that. And so I do believe there will always be reasons to be cynical, and we sometimes will miss the mark. But despite that, I think that there will also always be reasons to be hopeful too. I have seen too many people get through the hardest times in their lives with the help of religious community to simply dismiss it. I have seen too much creative, meaningful action emerge from our congregations to remain cynical for long. With failings and all, I am still deeply hopeful about church. I believe that our covenant, our promise to be present to one another through all of the joys and sorrows of life, will hold if we commit ourselves to making that true. I would like to close my sermon today with another story. It's actually a true story that is told by the great writer and minister Fred Craddock. He writes this: "My mother took us to church and Sunday school, and my father didn't go. He complained about Sunday dinner being late when she came home. Sometimes the preacher would call, and my father would say, 'I know what this church wants. Church doesn't care about me. Church wants another name and another pledge, right? Isn't that the name of the game? Another name, another pledge.' That's what my father always said, even when the pastor came over for dinner. Every time, my mother in the kitchen, always nervous in fear of flaring tempers, of somebody being hurt. And always my father said, 'The church doesn't care about me. The church wants another name and another pledge.' I guess I heard it 1,000 times. One time my father didn't say it. He was in the Veterans Hospital and he was down to 73 pounds. They'd taken out his throat, and my father said, 'It's too late.' They put in a metal tube, and x-rays burned him to pieces. I flew in to see him. He couldn't speak, he couldn't eat. I looked around the room and potted plants and cut flowers on all the windowsills, a stack of cards 20 inches deep beside my father's bed. All of this I saw. And even the tray where they put the food, if you can eat, had a flower on it. And all of the flowers beside the bed, every card, every blossom, were from persons or groups from the church. My father saw me read a card. He could not speak, And so he took a Kleenex box and wrote on the side of it a line from Shakespeare. If he had not written this line, I would not tell you this story. My father wrote, "In this harsh world, draw your breath in pain and tell my story." "What is your story, Daddy?" I asked. And my father wrote, "I was wrong. I was wrong." As we pledge ourselves to support our beloved North Shore Unitarian Church for another year, may we renew our commitment to being a sincere and caring community for every person who attends our services online and eventually once again walks through our doors. Let it be a community where love will guide us and a vision for what is possible in our lives and in our world will become real. Let all of that be true. Amen. I love you, and blessed be. If you found something of meaning here today, I invite you to share the link with your friends and family. I also want to sincerely thank you for your generous pledge to support our beloved community. Our church would not be possible without your support. Now, if you have not gotten a chance to log into Realm to pledge, I invite you to do that now. And in a few moments, we'll of course have coffee hour. You can find the link pasted in the chat. But first, by way of closing, some words from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Know this, the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community here and now. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this type of understanding goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of an old age into the exuberant gladness of a new one. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of all. May it be so, and amen.